Hey cuties, welcome, and I hope you're ready for a special spooky night. Tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Tonight, I'm going to be reading to you a special collection made by you, the cutie community itself. Tonight will be an extensive and long, horrifying night of your own terrors. Many of you have submitted stories and moments, both written from your mind and written from your experience, that I will be sharing tonight with all of you. So pull up a seat by the campfire, grab a nice blanket, and, well, don't pay too much attention to the noises in the woods behind you. Let's begin, shall we? So the first story of the night is by 𝗕𝗲𝗃. 𝗕𝗲𝗃 submitted a few that I found to be rather surprising. So let's begin. They say the mind can play tricks on you when you're in a dark room. However, there was a time I wish it was just a simple hallucination. A friend, we'll call them Brandy, called me up because they were having issues with their heater and their house was really cold. Now, normally this would have made sense if it was in the middle of winter, but this was on the cusp of spring and summer, so the heater shouldn't even be turning on. Perhaps it could be the AC was just doing a really good job. It's a really great theory and all, but one slight problem. Their house didn't have an AC installed. Thinking it was likely that Brandy was just being paranoid from watching scary movies the night before, something like that, I went over there not expecting too much. I did bring my tools, flashlight, coveralls, all the like, because their heater was located in the house cellar. The ceiling was really low. I mean, to the point that there were portions I had to squat and crawl just to get through. By the time I got to the heater, I noticed that not only was it turned on, but it was actively running at that very moment. But it was cold. I mean, really cold, to the point that I needed a jacket. Well, turning around, I had my answer. Staring back at me was not one, but two sets of pale eyes. It almost looked like bodies of black mist was crouching against the wall. One looked like a small child, and the other was more of a large dog or cat. I wasn't sure if my mind was going crazy. I stared for a brief second before my flashlight flickered and went out. I had just replaced the batteries before coming by, so it doesn't make sense. How could they have died already? I felt my heart skip a beat as I tried to race up the stairs. I just couldn't get up those stairs fast enough. After a moment to catch my breath, I decided to take off my coveralls because, well, I don't think this is something I can fix with a wrench and a screwdriver. But as I changed, I could see Brandy's face go pale. On the back of my shoulder was a long, 3-marked scratch that ran from the top of my shoulder to the base of my right shoulder blade. I know of a few emblems and wards from my ghost hunting days, and, well, I placed a few around the house, and the good news was it did start to warm up and feel more like a regular house, but we've never been so shaken. So when it came time, Brandy opted out to not renew the lease, and, well, we never looked back. Alright, that's story number 1, but looks like 𝗕𝗲𝗃 isn't quite done with us. We've got another one right here. Have you ever seen something or come across something that, in retrospect, you realize you're still lucky to be alive afterwards? Alright, well, a couple of friends, let's call them Scott and Ben, yeah? And I were on our way back from an excursion, and having recently picked up a boat. The trip was long, and Murphy's Law was running hard that day. We were exhausted and just wanted to get home. Scott was driving, and Ben was riding shotgun, and while I was in the back seat of the truck. The radio was turned off since where we were at, it was full of static, and the adapter to play music from our cell phones wasn't working. There weren't any other cars on the road, and, well, we hadn't passed anybody in what seemed like over an hour. The sun was already dipping behind the mountains, and we were nearing the final few hours of our travel when I saw something out of the corner of my eye, but chalked it up to a hallucination. There's no way an elk can be 10 feet tall, right? But about 3 minutes later, I saw it again. This time, making sure I wasn't crazy, I spoke up. Hey, did you guys see that? See what? Scott asked. I could have sworn I saw a deer or an elk. What, an elk or deer? In these mountains? Wow, it's almost like they live here. Ben's voice was laced with sarcasm. No shit, Sherlock. I meant it looked like it was 10 feet tall. Well, if that's the case, I'm grabbing my rifle. We'll be eating deer for weeks, Scott proclaimed. Ben, however, was unusually quiet as he stared out the window. About 5 minutes later, Ben had asked aloud, Hey, 𝗕𝗲𝗃, how big was that elk again? It looked to be about 10 feet, but I probably was just seeing things. No, I don't think you were. I just saw it too, Scott. We need to get out of here. Scott, still thinking it was just us being stupid, just scoffed and kept driving at a normal pace. Well, that is until he saw the figure just off the side of the road, staring at us. It was much closer than before, and we were all able to get a better look at it. Its horns were mismatched and sharp, its jawline was rigid, and it kept a close gaze on us as we drove past. Ben's face went as pale as could be, and he yelled at Scott to floor it, pulling out his phone. We were passing through a place that was known for paranormal sightings. Donner's Pass. A few moments later, a cop car came flying past, the lights flashing, going well over 100. Turning on my scanner, I was listening to emergency chatter. Supposedly a car hit a deer just up the road from us, but when we passed it, the car was there, front end looking like it hit a brick wall, but no body, deer, human or otherwise. We finally made it home, but by then, we were too worked up to sleep. Dang, 𝗕𝗲𝗃. 2 really scary instances. Both of them looking you right in the eye. It's a miracle you're here to tell the story. And would you believe it? Our boy's got one more to share. One thing my family is certainly known for is being stubborn. No one more so than my great-grandmother. She was nice and enjoyed spending time with family, but she had a few rules. Always eat your veggies, don't yell in the house, and never sit in her rocking chair. She eventually passed away in her sleep in that very same chair. It was an off-white chair with a red cushion, and, well, like any old chair, it would creak a bit when rocking. We were so used to her sitting in it that whenever we had get-togethers, nobody else ever used it. Oh, until one day my cousin, tired of sitting on the floor, climbed into the chair and started rocking in it. But no one said anything since, well, Grandma was gone. And it wasn't being used. But almost immediately he thought someone flicked his ear and looked around for who it could be, but there was nobody there. And the next day, he got really sick. I mean, not deathly ill, but bedridden for days. A few days later, I came downstairs from my room and, well, I went to the living room. I paused for a moment and could hear the old creaking of the wood and looked to see the chair rocking back and forth ever so slightly. My great-grandmother and I always got along, so I didn't mind. I even chuckled a little bit, making the comment, "Need help with the TV, great-gram?" At that moment, the TV turned on. Knowing how stubborn my grandmother was, I doubt she would be leaving the chair. Not to mention, she was always very protective of the family, so to this day, whenever we have a family visit, nobody touches that chair, and if we see it rocking, we say hello to great-gram. Oh, my heart. Well, Tree, do me a solid and say hi to your great-gram for me at the next family gathering. That was a lovely story. Well, I guess we should continue on to our next horror contender, and our next person has quite a lot of stories, some being very small and some being rather lengthy, so I would like to give a big, warm round of applause to 𝗕𝗲𝗓. 𝗕𝗲𝗓 has been a very large member of our community from almost the beginning, and when we started the horror stories this year, they sent me a huge document. So I'm going to be going through everything in this document from A to Z, and I hope you guys are excited too. So, remember, these are a bunch of small occurrences, all of which actually happened. So let's just go down the line, okay? Alright, I'll try to do these in order of them happening and do my best to make no distinctions between what can and, well, can't be explained. All my childhood, I recall either feeling the presence of something or someone just being out of sight, or seeing weird, unusual lights passing by my windows. I was at my grandmother's place for a sleepover at one point when I was younger, and had to share the room with my uncle. Me being already scared of the dark due to lights and stuff in my past was really nervous when suddenly we heard a rumbling and a low, like, gurgling sound coming from the outside of the window. I never learned what it was, but all my uncle would tell me is, don't look, turn off the lights, and force yourself to sleep. There was another time, when I was 6 or 7, I was staying up late and just was stargazing out of my window, leaning against the windowsill of my room. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday night, I think. I didn't want to feel weird, or if anything was off, but when I went to bed and woke up, 2 days had passed. I don't remember anything ever happening. And from what my whole family said, it was as if I was there the whole day, as if I had gone to bed and woken up and went through the whole day, but to me, 2 days had passed. But to everyone else, only one did. Now, this next one could have been a dream, but the dread it left me with still creeps up my adult spine when I think back to it. I was sleeping in the attic at the time, and our roof had a little window in it, so, well, being a curious kid, when I saw something on the roof tiles, little me gets on a chair to peek out of the roofs. I saw no lights, heard no noises, but I swear I saw my neighbor levitating over the roof, still asleep, surrounded by what I can only describe as like a lizard-esque person. It's so hard to explain, but, well, there was multiple of them, and one of them looked my way, I closed that curtain so fast and ran all the way through the attic room and spent the night sleeping on the floorway in the hallway. Now this next one's a little silly, a little weird, but I figure it's still good to bring up to you guys, my fellow horror-loving enthusiasts. So near my childhood house, there's this old digging pit, right? It was turned into a lake with a farm next to it. I used to love visiting it and just walking around the wooded bits for a bit. So I was walking around near the farm, and I had a field for sheep to graze and walk about, fenced off, of course. And for just a moment, as I stood there, I felt like I saw double, and in that moment where the vision was blurred and it was hard to focus, I saw myself. I saw myself in the distance, somewhere else in the field. I snapped back to normal when I heard a sheep bleating. And what's strange is the sheep was standing exactly where I saw myself. For years, even though I slept alone in my room, I had a bunk bed. What do you do when you have a bunk bed if you're a preteen, right? You spare blankets to make a fort, of course. So little me does that, and for whatever reason decided it needs to be as dark as possible in the fort, except for this tiny little slit between the blankets. I got it as dark as it can be. Now, for whatever reason, I decided to lay down and take a nap, only to wake up to an overwhelming sense of dread. I heard a strange noise and then shuffling in my room, some rummaging, like there were several people in my room at once. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I didn't even feel like I could blink or even turn from that tiny little slit in the blankets. There wasn't much I could see in that tiny slit of light, and I didn't see a full figure or anything, but I was in that room alone. And I saw a shadow walk across that light ray. Well, you might think this is the end, but I've got a lot more. Some nights when I was with a friend, we would decide to take a walk through the nearby woods by the lake. I'll be honest, we experienced some strange things, like bushes rustling or, an animal following us through the brush, but we'd check it and there'd be nothing. But I digress. There was this one night, and we were standing on the beach of the lake, stargazing, taking in the cool night breeze. And, on more than one occasion, I would see this greenish soft glow around what looked like a little girl, maybe a teen, hovering just above the water in the middle of the lake. She'd be dressed in white, dark long hair. We attempted to talk with her every time that this happened. And, my friend claimed that he could, but I was never able to. I couldn't get a response. It was like she was just a vision. But there was this one night, right? I really wanted to talk to her. I was determined, you could even say. And I focused on her, trying everything I could to mentally connect, only to snap out of it and having the feeling as if a fish got smacked into my face, leaving a slight red mark on my face for the whole night. Is this what it's like to be rejected from a lake ghost? Alright, but anyway, continuing on. Another night, another friend, yeah? We're walking around the lake again. There's this one path that halfway through was illuminated by a street light by the nearby road. It was a typical creepy lamp, and we had been that way before, But this specific night, we both got this feeling. You know, you can feel when someone's watching you. You ever sat in a classroom and you're looking at the blackboard and you just get this feeling, you turn and you can see a kid staring right at you as if you just knew. Your senses just knew. It was like that, but infinitely worse. And we turned around. Standing where that streetlight should have been was this weird shadow, and the rest was just this huge blur. It was like we couldn't even see right. I have never run so fast in my life in the fear that whatever it was blacked out in that street lamp would get us. I was sleeping all alone in my room when I suddenly woke up as if I was spray bottled in the face. My face was wet. My brain was immediately in panic mode, and this is the thing. I had a perfectly straight cut on my stomach. That was bleeding, yes. And the blood hadn't dripped and stained the blanket. It was as if it just happened, but there was no one in the room. No one. My bed's far enough away from the door that if someone had cut me, if someone had played a joke on me, they would have been there. And of course, just to clarify, this isn't a life-threatening cut. It wasn't like I was gut stabbed and taken apart. It was just a thin cut. But people don't wake up with long, straight cuts. You know? More things happened around the house, too. It wasn't just that. There was this one time when I was just taking a shower, right? No big deal. And I had gotten to the point of rinsing the shampoo out of my hair, and when I opened my eyes, I saw these long, spindly finger-like things letting go of the shower's tiny window, like something had been watching me. But, you know, life continues on, so I was with my one friend on my way back to my house from his, when roughly about halfway on the way back, he stopped, and we looked up to the otherwise clear, starry night with no clouds in sight. There was this perfect, well, near perfect, circle of just dead black right above us. I mean, at this point, I'm gonna be honest, we'd seen some shit. So, it wasn't enough to shake us with fear like that night with the shadow, but we definitely did not hang around to find out. And if I hadn't learned my lesson, me and two of my friends were now once again at what I think we can safely call the haunted lake. At night, of course, because, you know, intelligent. But I digress. We decided to take a break after talking about the weird vibes we had been feeling. And, you know, we sat down and we're talking. Kind of like tonight. But then, rustling everywhere in the bushes by the lake, all around us. But we couldn't see a thing. For a moment, I swear it felt like there were spiders crawling all over me, or bugs of some sort. And our friends, my friends, they felt the same, but I couldn't see anything. Well, a while after that, one of my friends moved to live on his own. So I would go and visit him. To have something familiar there, you know, to help him settle in. Moving's not the easiest. Now, somewhere along this time, the local government decided to put a non-illuminated path through the forest between our houses, which was pretty close to the usual path we took. During the day it was fine, but well, at night it was creepy enough without anything even happening. So One night I was on my bicycle on the way home and just stopped at the start of the dark path. I decided nope, and took the long way around after hesitating for like 10 seconds. When the long path looped back to the other side of the forest path, I just felt like I had to turn around, so I looked back. And I saw something coming from the forest. Below the treetop line, a sickly orange hue coming from the forest. And I did not stay to discover more of that one, that's for sure. Alrighty, so we're gonna time skip a bit, and now I was old enough and moved into my own apartment, and I've been living on my own. Things had gotten mildly better. Small occurrences though, like the intercom would go off at random, never turning it on or never anyone there, but you know, small things. It was a while after my dad passed away that I had to move to this apartment, and well, while I was on my own, I was walking on the nearby street towards our local train and bus station, feeling the wind in my face and hearing the cars drive by as I saw them. When I would see a familiar face, I turned to face him and he faces me, looking exactly like I remember my dad while he was alive. And I would always say, "Huh, you know, you look exactly like my late dad." And he'd just smile and say, "It's because I am." Every time I've had this dream, I wake up just overwhelmed with feelings and tears, bursting out crying, wishing I could just tell him I miss him. But I can never get another word out. And always wake up. Well, you guys are here for the ghost stories, so I guess I should keep going, right? Let's see. There was this time, a friend and I decided to stay the weekend at one of our other friends' places on the other side of the country, in a pretty big city, well, for my standards, considering where I grew up, and, well, you guys know where I grew up by now. We didn't have the money or energy to be out all day, so we just decided to watch the TV all the time, when not playing video games. Now, there were only 2 real spots to sleep in that apartment, so I offered to sleep alone in the living room. With the city being busy day and night, all the sounds from outside made it hard to fall asleep, but I finally managed. Somewhere in the night, though, I woke up. It was dead quiet, aside from some weird, unintelligible mumbling that I couldn't pinpoint right away. I looked around the room and, well, I saw a vague humanoid shape near the front door. Like a shadow, but more 3-dimensional. It had no features, but I could tell it was looking at me somehow. It kept repeating the same sounds as if it was asking me something. But I, of course, had no clue what it wanted until I finally mustered up the courage and said, "Just leave me alone." A few minutes, and it was gone. And all the city sounds just rushed back in an instant. Like someone had just turned down the volume of life. Oh my goodness, Nogard. You want to tell me where you grew up? Because I think I need a lakeside vacation. Alright, well, continuing on, we have a story written by Iggy. This has to be one of my favorites. Have you ever walked into a room, found a vampire? No, not the sexy kind, but a foul creature with bony limbs and ashen skin. The kind that snarls at you like a beast about to pounce. The kind that roots you to the spot with its sunken, hypnotic eyes, rendering you unable to flee as you watch the hideous thing uncoil from the shadows. Has your heart started racing through your legs but refused to move? Have you felt time slow as the creature crosses the room? In complete darkness, in a blink of an eye. Have you shuddered with fear as it places one clawed hand atop your head and another under your chin so it can tilt you, exposing your neck? Have you squirmed as its rough, dry tongue slides down your cheek, over your jaw, to your throat, in a slithering search that's seeking your artery? Have you felt its hot breath releasing a hiss against your skin when it probes your pulse? The flow that leads to your brain. As its tongue rested there, throbbing slightly as if savoring the moment. Have you then experienced a sinking, sucking blackness as you discover that not all vampires feed on blood? Some feed on memories. Well, have you? Maybe not. But let me rephrase the question. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgot why you came in? God, that one's good. That one gets me every time. Iggy, excellent job. Moving on, we have a life experience from Frame Trash. Last year, during the school months, I had a paranormal experience. It started when I woke up one night around 2 a.m. and I heard these soft, subtle knocks at my door. I ignored them, a little freaked out, but I went back to sleep and everything seemed fine. Well, for a bit. The following nights, however, scaled in intensity. The night after the knocks started, with another repetition of waking around 2 a.m., but this time I saw tentacles darker than the pitch black of my room. Strangely, I could focus on them, and they were all animated, all around my room to have this sort of wavy effect. I wasn't scared or panicked at the time, to be honest, but unexpectedly annoyed. I closed my eyes after looking around for a bit and went back to sleep, but again, the next night, I was woken up by the same dark tentacles. Though, while I was looking around, I saw this mass, darker than the tentacles, at my feet off the side of the bed. It was circular looking, and along with it came this sense of dread and a soft anxiety. I looked at it in bewilderment, but rolled over to my left side in hopes that maybe I could feel more comfortable. I was still looking at the tentacles, though. During that, I saw what I presumed to be the tips of them, creeping around the perimeter of my eyes from all directions. They were this translucent white, and as they got closer and closer to covering my eyes, I closed them in hopes that none of the tentacles would get in. In the morning, I told my mother, and she had a sigil made for me. It was placed in my room directly above where my head rests on the bed. This protected me for about a week, until it got bent one night. And the night after it was bent, I saw this small four-legged creature thing come from my door. It looked like it was made out of cylinders. One for the body and one outreaching for each foot. And it crawled across my walls. Whenever it got near my head, it sounded like it was emitting a ringing noise. Similar to that sound you hear when you're in complete silence, and it's like you can hear your nerves in your skull. I closed my eyes and went to sleep, completely ignoring it. Honestly, I was fed up with all my restless nights at this point. Nothing really much has happened since then, except a lot of bad luck and life stuff. If you believe it, you do. If you don't, you don't. But my life hasn't been the same since. Well, Frame, I do hope your luck picks up a bit, but I'm glad to hear that you aren't being haunted by tentacle monsters at night. That had to have been pretty scary. We're going to move on to 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗃. I first saw the spirit when I was a kid. It was late at night, and our home phone was ringing. I could hear my mom telling me to go answer it, so I did. And when I picked up the phone, all I could hear was this loud static. I immediately hung the phone up and felt this chill run down my spine. I quickly looked behind me and saw this white floating shape in the hallway. I was too scared to move or yell, but the moment it slowly went towards me, I ran to my parents' room, waking them up to tell them what I saw. When my dad went to look, there was nothing there. The second time I saw the spirit, I was 15 years old. I was home alone as my mother and sister went out to get food. The house we lived in, all three of our rooms were down a hallway, mine at the beginning and my mom and sister at the end in that order. I was walking to my sister's room to put something up when the power started to flicker. I thought nothing of it because it was raining and, fluctuations are pretty normal, but when the power went out, I felt this chill up my spine I hadn't felt since I was a kid. And I looked behind me, and there was the white floating shape again. Though, this time, it didn't come at me slowly. It ran. I ran to my sister's room, and I held that door shut, thinking maybe it would keep me safe, it could keep the spirit out. I was trembling, out of breath. I could feel the air getting colder as the door shook violently in my hand, but I didn't let go. Even when the air felt normal, I didn't let go. Even when the power came back on, I didn't let go. I only let go when my mom and sister returned. My final meeting with the spirit is at my first retail job when I was 21. My coworker asked if I could see if we had an item for a customer, and I went back to go to our stock room when it happened again. There was that chill, the same chill. I was shaking, my breath was ragged, and I saw it at a distance. It was the same one, it was there. But this time it didn't move. There was just this moment, just a few seconds, where we stared at each other. I could feel it looking at me, and I stared right back. And my coworker came in and saw me standing there and asked if I was okay. I said it was nothing and went back to the front of the store. I've never seen it since. But even just talking about it fills me with dread. A specific feeling that I only ever felt in my life every time that spirit showed up. And to this day, I'm scared to see it again. Man, 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗃. Well, it's good news to hear your hauntings come to an end. One that didn't involve your end. But, well, a few more of you have a few stories to tell. Next one's by Mythical Man Polar Jet. I've got a pretty spooky tale from my old house. This happened when I was a wee little lad. Now, just for a little bit of context, we were moving due to my family getting a divorce, and it didn't end well, so we had to move and move fast. So Dad wasn't in the picture anymore, and it was just my brother, my mom, and I, and we were trying to box stuff up, but we needed help. So Mom had some friends come over who volunteered to help, and they brought their kids, people that me and my brother knew pretty well. Unfortunately, we've lost touch over the years, but I digress. Anyway, While the parents were all upstairs boxing things and moving it to the truck, we were downstairs in the basement playing hide and seek. Everything was going pretty smoothly until this one kid, God, what was his name? Well, anyway, it was his turn, and me and one of my friends went to hide under the staircase because it had this really big entrance by the water heater that you couldn't really see too well, but from inside you could see both the workout room and the big pantry. Now, the big pantry had these two huge folding doors which were open, so we were able to see into that room, and we could even see my brother and this other girl hiding behind the TV. We were just kids, you know. We were just joking about playing around for the last time in the house and how silly it was going to be and how long we were going to be there, but our game got interrupted. While we were waiting to be found, we watched this bottle of A1 steak sauce fall off a shelf and smash into the ground, which was startling to be sure, but the weird thing is all of the shelves in the house were built in a way to where they're slanted, so that way the stuff in the back doesn't just fall out outside of special circumstances like earthquakes and the like. And with all the stuff being pulled out, this bottle was in the back of the shelf, so it was a little weird. But we brushed it off. We were kids, we were playing. Maybe someone moved it and just happened to get too close, right? But more weird stuff started to happen. I had this model train that was in the basement with us. It was on its track. We hadn't packed it up yet. And it just turned itself on. It started running full speed around and around the track until it derailed itself. At that point, it was undeniable. The game didn't matter. Me and my friends and my brother, we all sprinted up that staircase. And frankly, I'm kind of happy we moved. Alrighty. We're getting near the end. We only got 3 stories left to go, so let's give up the next one to the King of Demons. One night, as I'm ready to go to bed, I see a pair of eyes that stare at me from the darkness. Honestly, I had gotten kind of used to it. They had been there for months. But this night it was different. When I looked at it, I felt this chill go down my spine that never happened before. So I would stare at it. I'd stare at it and stare at it and stare at it until it would vanish. And every time that these eyes showed up, I would do the same. Each time filling me with more dread than the time before. One time when I was sitting in my loft, I saw this tall lady staring at me with the same eyes as the ones that would make my blood run cold. So I went near the lady and she crawled into the downstairs bathroom. When I went downstairs, I saw these black veins running all around the house, leading straight to the bathroom. Well, I did the smartest thing anyone would do and went straight to the bathroom, opened that door, and as I opened it, in that slit, that crack, I could see the eyes. And when I pushed the door all the way, I felt this force push me to the ground. I could see what looked like the lady crawling up the ceiling, but her shape, it was ambiguous. It was almost like she was part spider, the way she climbed and crawled. I got on my feet and I ran after her, as it seemed like she was running towards my room. When I got to the stairs, I could see her staring at me from an object on my desk. And when I got around her, she was near this old Japanese katana I had received from my dad. When she turned to look at me, there was sorrow. Because it turns out, that sword, belonged to her son, my dad. Gonna be honest, King, I didn't expect that turnaround at the end. I was expecting someone to die, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Nothing wrong with a little bit of heart. And, frankly, I'm glad you're okay. I'm very terrified of bathrooms, so that could have turned out a lot worse for me. Second to last is from Johnny Turtle. I grew up in a house in a less than great neighborhood. It wasn't terrible, but it left something to be desired. My family, my dad especially, was never one to believe in the supernatural. That house, though, and, well, my room especially, tested us. The earliest story happened when I was a baby, and my dad watched as a man made a shadow walk through the hallway and into my room. Scared, he rushed in to find absolutely no one in there. I was sleeping soundly, and he had to ease his mind afterwards. The next things aren't so much of a story, but a series of oddities. My closet was easily the most haunted thing there. Lights on or off. If the door was open, you felt eyes staring at you intensely at that. Thinking back on it, remembering the sight of it, standing in the middle of that poorly insulated walk-in closet, brings this unbridled feeling of terror to me, even as I write this. Nothing ever happened in it, but the chills standing in it would bring the sheer impossibility of sleeping while it was wide open. Just evokes this feeling that moving away from that house let me escape some sort of greater evil. Next was the hand. So ghosts and spirits aren't supposed to come out until night, which makes what I experienced something I can't quite rationalize as normal. It was around 9 in the morning. I was being lazy and not wanting to get out of bed, laying on my stomach as my mom did laundry and my dad was out of work, when out of nowhere I felt this hand pressed to my back. I could feel every last finger down to the thumb. I know it's someone's hand. This force shoved me down into the bed, and it shoved me so hard that I literally bounced almost a foot off of my bed. I remember scrambling to my feet and then running out of my room expecting to see Mom just messing with me. But there was no one, much to my confusion. I ran over to the laundry room on the other side of the house to find her. Even though I asked, I didn't have to. I know it wasn't her. Mom was over 200 pounds and certainly wasn't quick enough to run out of my room, through the living room, potentially the kitchen, all the way to the laundry room without making a single noise and being completely full of breath. The last scary thing I remember was the TV. We had this old CRT flat screen TV in my parents' room. We had lost the remote and its power button had gotten to be real squishy, not really all that consistent. It took several tries to turn it on or off, and if it was left pressed in, would turn on and off depending on wherever it rested. So this day, I would be home alone for a few hours. Unfortunately, a thunderstorm had rolled in, and a fairly bad one at that. It was dark, aside from the living room, where I could hear the static. It was dark aside from the living room, and suddenly I hear static. The TV turned on. I went into the hall, into their room to turn it off. I felt uneasy, but hey, it's just a storm. I turn around, and I'm about to leave before, boom, static again. I turn it off once more, and for at least another half hour, all is well. And then again, I hear the TV without warning. Being in there a second time, I have that feeling crawl over me, the same one that I get from that damned closet. No matter, I turn off the TV and promptly exit, and not even 15 minutes later, it's on again. I hear the static and begrudgingly start to head over. When I round the corner in the hall, I see the TV, and they angled at me through the doorway, as if something was facing me to mock me. I ran back to the relative safety of the living room, and after another 30 minutes, that felt like an eternity trapped with a malicious being, my dad finally came home and just unplugged the TV since I was so terrified. I know it ended up a bit of a series of events, but I wanted to share all the awful things that place put me through. Honestly, Johnny, I'd be pretty scared too. None of those sound fun. But hey, it's in the past and you're living in a new place now, right? Alright, so last but not least, we have a story from 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃. And I hope you guys are ready for our final horror story of the night. I was 8 years old, living with my mother, my stepfather, and my 2 sisters. Asking with another family comprised of a father, a mother, 2 sons, and a daughter. This house was 4 stories tall and was on a hill, the bottom floor being the basement and garage. The second floor was honestly more the main floor because it had our living room, the kitchen, and the dining room. The third floor had me and my sister's rooms on each end, and the top was an attic. Nothing ever really happened in the attic or basement like most people think. But let's get into the story. I woke up one morning, got out of bed, and I felt something odd on my neck. So I walked over to the mirror next to the stairs in the hallway and saw these 3 finger marks, all together on the right side of my neck. I was a bit freaked out, so I went to call my sisters, who were older than me. Maybe they could understand or tell me what happened, or maybe they even did it, who knows. But when I looked over to their room, their door was open. But both of them looked terrified, their hair standing on end, except for the youngest, who looked like she was all bunched up like a fist. Before I could say a word, they both bolted up, screaming while running down the stairs. I was just standing there wondering what had happened when my mother and my stepdad, along with the entire other family, all ran upstairs to see what had happened. My sisters quickly told them, as they came up, what they saw, but there was nothing but a shadow in the corner that quickly disappeared. Things started being moved and objects were being thrown. The lights were turning on and off. And when you sat down on the couch, you could see the seat next to you compress like there was someone there. I mean, stuff was happening over and over and over, all the way until around 10:30 p.m., which at that point, my stepfather set up a night vision camera at the top of the stairs and connected it to a TV downstairs so we could see what was happening. And on the screen, we watched dust and orbs that were flying everywhere in every which direction. But what really scared us was what every single one of us saw on that TV, in the window, in the back. I saw a face, smiling with what looked like yellow eyes, which was impossible. Everyone ran outside except for me, my mother, and the oldest son, and the other family. God, I swear on my life it was staring at me. Even Scott Jr., the oldest son, said something along those lines. He felt they weren't watching him, but me. After everything calmed down, we went to bed. Me and my sister slept downstairs, obviously. That night, though, my stepfather was electrocuted. He didn't die, but he received a major shock that paralyzed him for about 2 weeks. He's relatively okay now. But just the odds, you know? 10 years later, I saw it again. The same face, while exploring an abandoned Air Force base headquarters that was made for World War I, but ended up used mostly in World War II. It was abandoned in, I want to say it was 1959, and was basically entirely cleaned out except for maybe like 3 of the rooms. And there were a lot of rooms. like 52 rooms. I was in the room that still had some stuff left behind when I saw its face. It hasn't hurt anyone since I found it, but it had followed me since then. It's been a little over a year since I investigated there. It's the 11th year since I first saw the face. I hope nothing happens, because, after all, it still follows me. Even now, I feel its gaze upon my soul. Oh my goodness, cuties. But thank you for sharing these lovely stories of your life with us. It's always an honor to have the opportunity to share these moments where you breached beyond the veil and saw something that others haven't. Those moments where normality echoes and changes into the unknown. Even in the moments where everything feels at risk. But all of you live to tell the tale. And now that story has been passed on to every one of us. Cuties, may you have a lovely hallowed eve. And I hope you've had quite the exceptional October. Maybe next year you'll have a story to tell from this one. Well, cuties, unfortunately, it's time for your lovely demon steps to leave for the night. But you might find me in that moment where you're sleeping and on the cusp of a dream, and you feel like you're falling, but something catches you. Next time, check your reflection, and you might see who caught you. Good night, cutie. I hope you enjoyed the video. Before we close up, I'd like to make a huge thank you to my Patreons. You guys are the backbone of what I do, and I couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much.